Joy, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate you making the time. Now, you were a witness of the Westall Incident back in 1966. I think as far as UFO sightings go, mass sightings are by far the most compelling for me. Yeah, maybe we'll just start with what happened back in Westall in 1966.
Okay. Well, I was, yes, definitely a witness with along with all the other lots of us. I was in science class and it was coming up to morning recess. It was about 10:15. A student ran in, flung the door open. It was a girl and said, Mr. Greenwood, there's flying saucers in the sky. You know, there's things in the sky. And of course, we all just burst out laughing. And yeah, right. And of course, we're thinking, oh, come on, it's coming to recess. We all get a bit excited. And anyway, Mr. Green was trying to calm us down a bit. And he said, hang on, just wait, just wait. And anyway, the bell went and he said, okay, we'll all go out and have a look. Don't run down the corridor because we used to get into trouble for running in the corridors. And so, of course, we all walked very quickly, had a half run out. Some went out one door, I went out another door, ran across across towards the oval, and there was lots of other kids running around. I don't recall a lot of the other noise with the other children, but it was apparently very loud because my sister was also there, but she was around the other side of the school playing netball, and she said she can remember the noise was really, because I just ran out onto the oval with there was a couple of my friends near us, and Mr. Greenwood was close by, and just stood there and looked up into the sky and trying to see, and then all of a sudden I saw them. And when I saw them, I was absolutely transfixed. I was so excited. And I just stood there and I looked at them and I just wanted to focus on what I was looking at because of the shape of them, the colour, the way they were moving. It was just unreal. I was so excited. A lot of the other kids apparently, well, quite a few were a little bit frightened. But I was excited and I just wanted to take all this in because I'd never seen anything like this before in my life.
What were you looking at?
Well, they were like flying saucers, like the cup on the side with a hump in the middle, the silver disc, a row sort of maybe lights. I couldn't sort of say that 100%, but they were flat on, and the way they moved was just incredible. And they were zooming over there we had big power pylons in the corner of the playground, and they were zooming over there, and then you'd look and all of a sudden, oh, it's over there, they're over there, or what, because I saw along with other kids, depending on where you were too, the perspective of what you saw. I saw three, some only saw two, some saw one. It just depended on where you were. But there were just, the movement was amazing. It was just incredible. It was just incredible.
How could
And
you?
then, of course, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, how could you best describe the movement?
Extremely accurate and extremely fast. Like they would be here and it would just go straight up and then straight across and then straight across and then over there, then back down there, up, down, just amazing. Moved like nothing we'd ever seen, like nothing like an aircraft or, anything like that. Because when later on, or within must have been a few minutes or so, they were around, and then they got buzzed by small Cessnas from Moorabbin Airport, because we were very close to the airport, so we were used to seeing these planes fly over all the time. Well, they came and they sort of buzzed around, and of course they had to fly in and come back. Now these things were having a ball with these planes. It was like they were playing cat and mouse. They'd let them get close, and then all of a sudden one would just go zoom and zoom. I mean, it was just incredible. It was amazing.
So you said you saw three, did
Yep.
you say? Yep, three. Yep. And I mean, this is just amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it did happen. It was real. And I mean, it wasn't just me, and it wasn't just, there were teachers, there were students, there were with the high school students, of course, there were the primary school students, there were people working in the market gardens opposite, because in those days, Westall was a very rural, really rural place. So there was quite a lot of farming. There was houses, of course, too. And the school was only relatively new. Westall High School was only relatively new. It had been there for a couple of years, but I think there was only, I'm trying to think, my sister was a year ahead of me, and I think there was only one or two classes ahead of, it wasn't even up to matriculation or, at that stage. So it was they were both new, relatively new schools. So and they said there were people in the market gardens that were working that saw them. There were, it just wasn't children, and it wasn't dark, and it was broad daylight, beautiful clear, sky. Just amazing.
How old were you when this happened, or what grade were
12
you
and
in?
a half. 12 and
12
a
and a
half.
half. So that's like
Yeah.
grade 6, I suppose.
No. I was in year 8. I was
Oh,
very
okay.
young. I started high school when I was 11 and 3 months old. I didn't
Right.
do preps. I went to grade 1 because
Wow.
I could read. Because of my older sister. She I could read. I've always been a very avid reader. I love to read.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah. So reading was a real thing. So, and because I could read and write, that I didn't do preppies. So I sort of turned, because I'm October born, so I sort of turned 11 in the October in year 6, and then went to high school the next year. So
Right.
yeah.
So these things are kind of zipping around in the sky. How many people witnessed this event? Do you
Oh,
you
a
know
couple of
of?
hundred.
Yeah, a few hundred people.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Because if there were the kids that were out on the field, there were already two kids out on the field doing sport. They're playing cricket and football and all that. They were doing PE, and they saw them earlier than we did, because that's why the girl had run in to tell, because there were kids out on the sporting field that had already seen them. And of course we're quite a few minutes, or not. Well, they were a few minutes ahead of us coming out. Yeah.
How long did the event take? How long were they around
Or
for?
look, they were up in the air for quite a while. I'll tell you, probably, it's hard to say. I mean, it's a long time ago, of course, but it wasn't quick, because what happened after the aircraft disappeared and everything too, the sources had come sort of back into view, and then they went up and they went down into the pine trees, into the area called the Grange. Now, the Grange was part market gardens, bush, pine trees, and it was acres and acres of land. There was also a really old house in there that years and years ago people had actually lived in it. It was a really old house. Now, we used to do our cross countries and stuff through there. So we'd disappear. They'd send us off on a cross country, and we'd nick off for, whatever. And anyway, they disappeared behind the trees, right? And they were down. Now, that's when some of the kids had run down the oval and jumped the fence and took off after them, right into the Grange. I didn't go. I wish I had have now,
Yeah.
because, we used to, you couldn't leave the school grounds in those days without permission. It was just not on. It was, ruled by really strict rules, not as lenient as they are these days. And anyway, they disappeared down behind the tree, and some of the kids had run in after them, and they were down there for a few minutes. And well, it was probably, look, it could have been 10 minutes, I reckon, or more. And then they came back into the air, and came sort of back. And one of the girls that I was with, Suzanne, and I have been down to the school quite, recently and over the years, just to verify in our minds what we actually saw. Because Suzanne even had hypnotherapy to take her back. She was so keen to go back to try and clarify in her brain what she'd actually seen. So, And we went back and we sort of feel that we said the big one, we reckon one was bigger than the other. But I think the only reason it was bigger is because it was closer. So the others were a little bit further back, you know. And anyway, the big one, it just took off straight up in the air, turned on the side. And as it's turned on the side, the sun had hit the bottom of the disc, and you got that light, you know, the beam of light from the sun. And then they just all went and they were gone.
When they were gone, could you see the movement, or was it so fast you couldn't even?
It was incredible. Well, that's what it was like. It was just boom, straight up, you know, you're watching straight up in the air on the side. And that's it. They're gone.
So it moves blunt side forward.
Well,
underside forward when it zips off.
Sort of on the side. When they went up on the side, it went sideways. So it went up straight, and then so I said when the sun hit the, you know, on the bottom of the disc, and then they just flew off like that. And they were gone. Yeah.
What can you tell me about the? I know you didn't jump the fence, but what can you tell me about other students' experiences from jumping the fence?
One of them is a friend of mine to this day, and her name's Terry. Now Terry went running through the Grange because she was a year behind me, but anyway, she went running through the Grange or whatever. She came around the corner part of the Grange, and there were two other girls that were there. One had fainted. One was hysterical and ran past her and ran back out of the Grange, or past her, and she went around the corner, and one was hovering on the ground right near. She was virtually not directly in front of her, but she could see it as clear as day. It was close to the ground, hovering on the ground. And she saw it when she got closer. She went to go a little bit closer, and she could feel some heat coming off it, and then it rose up in the sky and just took off.
Did any of them have any bizarre things happen to them or anything? I mean, I've looked at a lot of different UFO cases, and you know, there was another similar one in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Maybe I can't remember.
None of the witnesses to date have ever said that we saw little green men or saw figures. Yes, we did see craft, and without a doubt, but I don't think I've ever had sort of anybody that, and there hasn't sort of been anybody that's actually come out, or maybe there have been, but they haven't been. The facts just don't add up about, you know, what happened that day. But most of us sort of don't declare. We did see UAPs or UFOs, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. So, but they had to have been controlled by something, someone.
Yeah. Was the experience for the students that ran up really close to it, was it a traumatic one, or was it an exciting one? Your friend Terry,
like I said, one of the girls had fainted. Now, whether or not she was just overcome by the emotion or whatever, I really don't know. Terry wasn't frightened. She wanted to get close. She said, I knew I'd get into trouble because I jumped the fence, but she wanted to have a look. She just wanted to get close. No, it didn't traumatise us. No, well, not that I can say. I've never been traumatised by it. I always, actually now, especially because people are talking about it, I feel a bit privileged actually to have witnessed what I did.
Yeah. That's awesome. Good outcome.
Yeah.
So I've seen that documentary Westall 66. I've been looking into this case a bit recently, and one of the students that keeps popping up was a girl called Tanya.
That's a story. Look, Tanya did apparently get taken. I didn't see that, so I can't really comment on that. I didn't actually see what happened there. But apparently she got taken away, and there was supposed to be some sort of hoo-ha. But it's a very foggy thing. I don't know
Okay.
enough about it. I didn't see it, so I really can't comment.
Sure, sure. Before we get into what happened after, I would just love to dwindle on just the specifics, as much specifics as I can get out of you about the actual craft. I mean, what size was it?
Yeah, they were huge. Well, they were visible to the naked eye, right? Now we're talking, you know, you're looking in the sky, and they were visible, very visible to the naked eye. So they would have been, what? I'm trying to think, not as big as a bus, but probably as big as a couple of cars. They were big. You know, they weren't little. They were very, you could see the shape. They were very visible, so they were quite large.
And was there what was the surface like? I mean, I've heard
Well,
metallic, was there?
it looked like metal to me, you know, shiny, sort of grey, you know, not shiny like stainless steel, but, you know, sort of matte grey, if you know what I mean. Just that, yeah, but definitely a metallic type thing.
Any windows or any
Well,
abnormalities?
I can't remember that exactly. I do remember, I'm pretty sure there was a row of windows sort of around, or lights around the bottom. But I was just sort of concentrating on the other, you know, the other sort of bits and pieces. That's what I say. It's after 57 years, some things are very clear and some are a little bit vague. That is extremely clear to me, like what I saw with the craft and whatever else. And then, of course, what happened after that is extremely clear to me too. But there are certain things that I'm not, it's like with the Tanya thing. I didn't say that, some of the kids did, so I can't comment on that. I can only comment on what I saw.
Were there any sounds from the craft?
I seem to recall just a really slight humming, a slight humming.
What about when they would actually zip around? Did there seem to be any sound, any manipulation of the air?
No, just movement. It was, no, I can't say that there was any, you know, particular sound. No.
That must be a really surreal thing to witness.
Well, at the time, I guess, you know, we didn't sort of think about it too much, because it was exciting. Like I said to you, I was excited. Some of the kids weren't. Some were quite frightened. They thought it was the end of the world. You know, we're going to get invaded, you know, or whatever. What are these things? You know, what's coming up? What are they looking at? What are they here for? I mean, you know, yeah.
Was there any other features or surreal aspects that stood out as just odd, or just any other information about
just
these
the
crafts?
way, well, I think just the way that they were, it didn't seem as if they were particularly worried about us looking, you know, watching or whatever. Like I don't know whether because we were children or whatever that, you know, I mean, you can sort of make up theories, whatever you like to do, but they didn't seem overly perturbed or worried, in a hurry to get out of the way, you know, to get away.
Yeah, they weren't threatened. They weren't worried.
Yeah, well, that's what I think, right? That's what I think anyway. Yeah.
So directly after this, the crafts zipped off. So they've been flying around. They've landed. They've risen back up, turned on their side, zipped away. During this time, you've had light aircraft like Cessna airplanes kind of coming in and checking them out as well, and trying to follow them. Once they all left, what happened after?
Wow, what happened after that? Well, I just sort of just decided everybody was just sort of all over the place, running around like crazy things. And I just walked around the other side of the school and sort of hanging over the fence on Rosebank Avenue. Now, we had the Hume Pipe Factory was opposite us. It's now all housing and all that now. And we had a big nature strip. Anyway, I'm just sort of looking at, watching all, you know, doing whatever. And next thing, these Jeeps arrived. Now, they pulled up on there, and I remember this very, very clearly. That's what I said, this is very up here. Can't leave, won't leave. They pulled up, and they were green Jeeps with the, you know, the canvas covers over the back. Now the guy got out of the front, and he was in a green uniform. So he went and pushed. There were two of them, two or three. I think that I remember two, and he pulled the back up, and these other people in green uniforms got out of the back of the Jeeps. They both did. They had like clipboards and things. Now, also too, some of the uniforms, some of them had camouflage gear on, right? Like in camouflage. Now, apparently, and this is fact, in 1966, Australian Army did not wear camouflage, but the Americans did. And there was a group of them that was stationed, I think, at the Victorian Army barracks at that stage. So they did wear camouflage, but they were definitely in the camouflage and the green. So they all sort of came together, and they were talking and pointing, and you know. So I was just watching them. Then they got back in the Jeeps, and they took off around the corner, which I think they went down to the Grange, obviously, to check out what was going on down there, I think. Yeah.
How soon after the event did the Jeeps turn up?
Oh, they were there within 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Yeah, They were there.
So did you say it was probably roughly about 20 minutes of the event from when the crafts turned up? It would have been about a 20-minute duration, and then 15 minutes after. So we're talking about 35 minutes of them actually arriving. 35 minutes later, you've got some kind of authorities.
Oh, yes, absolutely. They were there quick, smart. Yeah, they were there. They were there quick, smart.
Did you speak to any of them? Did any of them talk to you? Were you able to, or do you know anyone, was anyone able to verify whether they had Australian or American accents?
I'm not sure about that one. I couldn't sort of hear them talking. I could hear them sort of mumbling, because it was across, you know, quite not a distance, but they were across the road, and it wasn't like that. And they weren't talking that loudly. They were sort of talking to each other. But it was funny because that afternoon, my sister had said to me, she said, I didn't see them, but I know what you saw. And she said, we're going down to have a look. And because we'd all been told, that was another thing that had happened, not after that too, with that we had that special assembly. Anyway, we'd been told you don't go down anywhere near it. If you talk to any media or whatever, you'll be into trouble. You're all hysterical. You didn't see anything. Don't talk about it. It was a weather balloon, all this. That was the principles to us. And anyway, she said to me, we're going down to have a look at She said, I don't care, we're going down. Yeah, or near the Grange. We went very close, though. We only went just across the road from the primary school was the gate where we used to go through, because the primary school was on a dirt road, and we used to go through there that's where we'd start our cross-country runs. And so we just went in. Now, we didn't go in very far at all, and we were she said, get down. And we were sort of watching, and we walked up to this fence, and the grass was really, really high. And there were army people in there, right? And some were digging and they were sort of had machines, and they were taking notes and doing things. And she was watching. Now, the grass was high, was waist high at least, but had been flattened into a really big circle, like it was flat. And they were in there, and we were looking and watching, and then all of a sudden she said to me, oh, I don't like this. We're going to get into trouble. Come on, quick, we've got to go. So we took off. But there were more than one circle. There were two or probably three or four at least, because I remember that one. Terry, of course, had the circle where it had been hovering in front of her, and a couple of the other witnesses have pointed out spots where they reckon they came later and saw circles. So there was more than one particular space.
Wow.
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, what more can you tell me about these men that arrived? I've heard various.
Well, there was not just that. There wasn't just them over the whole day, because we'd had this assembly. We had Army, I think Air Force, men in black suits, police, right? We had all these people coming and going. The principal called this special assembly to try and get everybody to calm down because everybody had gone, a bit crazy, and then wouldn't go back into. That was, I think, was after lunchtime because nothing sort of happened for, because people were just going really crazy. And then he was standing in the quadrangle. We had the quadrangle where we used to have our assemblies on a Monday morning. Now, there was a little sort of, there was a doorway and there was like a porch, I suppose. That's where he used to stand. Now, behind him, and it's still there, is a long corridor. Now, this corridor had glass, glass, what you could see. And he was there with the Deputy Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, well, I suppose the Deputy Principal, she was there as well. And behind him, when he was talking, they were all lined up, these people in these uniforms, right? Standing, watching and listening to what he was telling us. Now, a couple of the kids also apparently got interviewed by the men in the black suits. So they were coming and going, and then and I mean, the fire brigade had turned up too. And then later that afternoon, Channel 9 had arrived. Now, being told, don't talk to anybody, to me, doesn't work. So I was with about 4 other kids, myself and Marilyn, a couple of boys, and we were out the front of the school. We just walked out the front of the school because it was coming up to Easter. So we were going on to Easter break. So we usually finished a little bit earlier. So we walked out the front of the school, and the Channel 9 film crew were there, you see, and they come out when the man came and said, oh, did you kids see what, he said, yeah. Would you talk to us about it? So we said, yeah. So we told our story and whatever else. And as we were standing there, I remember, and I'm pretty sure he's a policeman, but he walked up to me and he put his hand on my left shoulder and he said to me, put his finger and he said to me, now you stop talking, all you kids stop talking, you go back into the school. And then he turned around and he pointed at the cameraman and he said, you stop filming and you go away. Now, that was on the news that night because when we got home, my sister said, Mum, Dad, Joy's going to be on the TV. Joy's going to be on the TV. So anyway, and it was, but of course that film's gone missing. So, there was, yeah. So
the film that was on the news has gone missing.
Yeah.
So there's no archive of that.
No, there was a cylinder found. There was a cylinder found, but in the Channel 9, where they stored things, that said Westall, whatever, UFO, but there was no film in it.
Yeah.
So I got detention after that.
Really?
Yeah. So did all the others, yeah.
Worth it though, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Were there any threats from these people? Was there any kind of blackmailing or threats?
Well, look, we were all just told, our principal was ex-army, right? Now, and he ruled with an iron fist, and I mean he did. So if you stepped over the line, if he said, don't do this and you did it, you got into trouble. And it was just the way it was. We weren't allowed to talk back or whatever. We were virtually told, just shut up, don't talk about it, didn't happen, it's going to go away and have an Easter break, but it's finished during it. But I say to people, why in heaven's name would you have Army, Air Force, black suits, police, fire brigade for a weather balloon? Really? No. Sorry, no, doesn't cut it with me. And media that wanted to, for a weather balloon, no. And there wasn't a weather balloon. There was more than one. And this is it. And so that was it. But then the next day, and I was lucky too because our parents were very supportive. My father and mother were very supportive. Some of the kids' mums and dads said to them, "Oh, you stupid, you have you stupid kids and blah, blah, blah." We we did what we were told in those days. We didn't really. Can you imagine if we'd all had phones like today? Well, wow, it would have been on YouTube in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
You know. But we did what we were told, and we just sort of accepted, well, we've been told we're not allowed to talk about it. Well, I guess we don't. But apparently a couple of the kids had been interviewed, as I said before, by the men in black and told, things like, oh, I suppose you think you saw little green men, do you? And blah, 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 trying to ridicule them to make us feel like we were all stupid,
Yeah. Yeah, it's I've heard that there was photographs taken and the camera was taken and never returned.
The physics teacher Barbara Robbins, she had taken photos and that was confiscated. That was taken off her. The camera was taken by I think it was the Air Force that took that. Mr. Greenwood had been interviewed. They'd come to his house, and the Air Force, and told him that if he spoke about it, that he would be charged under the Secrets Act, and that his reputation would be sullied, that they would say he was an alcoholic and he would never teach again. Now, he was a very young teacher at that time. Westall, I think, was his first teaching, job, and he was a great teacher. So, there were people that were really sort of quite put under pressure not to talk about it. And of course, as time went on, I mean, some of the people we went to school with became doctors, lawyers, nurses, all sorts of. We all went in all different ways, all different professions. But some of them, like I know for a fact, one of them that was in the form I was in, he became a barrister. Now, he was a witness, but he wouldn't talk about it because, can you imagine? People would say he was probably, so right. It would have affected his, his work life, his whole life. So it affected people in all sorts of different ways. I never, I had a lot of flack from people, saying, oh, how drunk were you and what drugs were you on? And, I was 12 and a half. Goodness me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, there's a few different mind-blowing aspects of this. Of course, the craft is the most mind-blowing, but
yep.
All these people turning up so quickly. I mean, we're talking about a massive cover-up within the, like, even if they were Americans, this is a huge cover-up within the Australian government. It kind of blows when you hear about different cases happening across a lot in America and stuff, but it does bring it more home when it's in little old Melbourne in the corner of the world, like just and rural Melbourne back then.
I was rural, and look, and the next day so we lived in Springvale, but we lived just across the railway line from Westall, which was we walked through paddocks to go home or whatever. The next day we had people arrived at my house. Now, we didn't even have the telephone on in those days, so I have no idea how they got our address, but they were the Victorian UFO Society, and they wanted to interview me. Now, there was Paul Norman, who was an American, and there was a very glamorous blonde lady that I remember, and another man. So they came into our house, and we sat at the kitchen table with Mum and Dad and my much younger brother, and they asked me what I'd seen and drew, had to draw a photo and whatever, and they asked my sister about, what she'd seen as well. So Mum and Dad were quite supportive about that. And then the next day they came back and they got me and took me down to the Grange and took a photo of me standing in one of the circles. Now, I've actually got that photo. Do you want to see it?
I would love to see it.
All right, well, hang on. Please. Give me a sec.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, here we are. Now that's me, and that's the burnt out because they'd been burnt.
I heard, yeah.
Because the army actually slashed and burned the whole area over the next couple of days. So, but that was done. So that's me standing.
So that's you standing in the burnt
one of the burnt out circles
area, right?
Yeah.
Did you get a good look at the flattened ground before it was burned?
I can remember with my sister that we were amazed at how the grass was flattened in such a, because it was so high, to be flattened in that circular thing. Yeah, so it was pretty, but they came in and they slashed and burned all the areas that they thought that there was evidence, I guess.
So on the day of recording this, the United States has just done a congressional hearing about UFOs, which is quite historic, given its history of, total denial and propaganda, and like you're saying, that the stigma that has gone with viewing UFOs has been extremely effective. Even if there's evidence to support it, a lot of people just really don't want to. It just puts them in the crazy category or something, and it's been a very
people. I mean, I've had people that have been really quite abusive, in ways, and it sort of hasn't. It never worried me too much, but I always had a question. I'd say, okay, look, you're entitled to your opinion. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that, right? And I have, but I'll ask you one question. And they'd say to me, what's that? And I say, well, were you there? And they'd say, no. And I say, well, I was. End of story. I don't have to justify I know what I saw. The other kids, the other people, we all know what we saw. It happened. It was real. It wasn't because we were hysterical or whatever else. So I don't have to justify what I saw to anybody because it happened.
Yeah.
And I know what I saw, and I can't take it. It's in my brain. It's a memory that's ingrained in my head. It's like you may have had experiences in your life that have stayed with you forever, that you can remember from when you were a little boy or whatever. There's something that was, or if you've had children, you can remember the birth of your children, or something that stays in your head and you can remember it. This is what it's like, and it won't go away, and I don't want it to go away.
Right.
But because it was a real thing.
I feel like at the moment the stigma is finally being lifted. I feel that people are ready to talk about it. I feel that people are very excited by the subject, open. There's a lot of credible people from within the US military and within the US government that seem to be whistleblowing and willing to talk, speak out. And yeah, I think a lot more people, especially in the internet age, there's just so much information. There are many mass sightings. There's the Phoenix Light.
They're all over the world. It's not just us, and it's not, and we were lucky because ours was a daytime sighting. I mean, really, a lot of people it's nighttime, but we were in the day, and I mean that was just. It was incredible. It was one of the most amazing things that has ever happened to me in my life.
Right. I've spoken to another witness, and one thing he was saying was, I mean, he seemed quite pissed off. He said he wants some answers before he dies. That he said there hasn't even been a limp excuse saying it's weather balloons. There's been absolutely zero official explanation. There's been no statements, zero, not just a complete denial. This didn't happen. Not even a Roswell style excuse. And I'm really hoping that given the timing of what is happening now, especially coming from the US, that maybe there could be an opening to I don't know, re-look into this and try and get some people, some higher ups, some official people to maybe comment.
That's most what all of us really want is for someone to say something extraordinary happened that day. something very extraordinary. Something that, look, if they can explain what it was with proof, that it was whatever they were doing, testing something or experimental craft, okay, so be it, we'd accept it. But I don't believe that. And all we want is verification that, yes, we were witness to something very unusual.
Right. In the documentary, it shows different things, and you've just described of tapes being missing and archived information being missing. There seems to be a lot of whenever there should be evidence, it has been evidently removed. You would have been interviewed by many people over the years. You would have had a lot of researchers probably speaking with you. Do you know any? Do you have any ideas of the main roadblocks that they have faced? Have there been attempts to speak to higher ups? Like, do we at least have any kind of indication of what direction we need to be looking in, or who to be applying pressure to?
Well, I know. I don't. Have you spoken to Shane? Shane Ryan, the
No,
guy
I've reached out,
Canberra.
but
He
haven't
probably
spoken.
Yeah. Well, Shane was sort of how we all got out, because he was starting. He was going to write. He was a student at Monash Uni, and he was going to write a children's book based on the so-called myth. And that's how he got into it, all things. But yeah, he's tried, lots of things. There's freedom of information things and all sorts of stuff. Look, there's got to be something somewhere. There's
Right.
something. Yeah, there's got to be something somewhere. But where is the thing? And whoever decides they're going to release it or doesn't want to release it or has been told not to release it, who knows? Oh, that's another thing I must tell you. My father was when was working at government aircraft factories at that stage. Now, he was building Jindovics and Mirages, right, which aircraft, of course. Now, he was working a lot down at Avalon, up and down. Now, within probably about 5 weeks or so after the event, he came home one day and just said, there's to be no more talk of the UFO to my sister and I. Now, whether he'd been told or he was trying to protect us as children, I really don't know. And unfortunately he passed away very young, and I never got the opportunity to actually ask him why that was said. Look, and because he was Dad, and like I said, we sort of okay, all right, so we just didn't talk about it anymore. So that's what I say.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Has this stemmed a big interest for you in the UFO phenomenon throughout your life, or has it just been, do you tend to just stick with your experience?
Oh, no, look, I'm interested in what's going on around the world, especially now around the world with what's going on with these things. And I have probably a little bit more open mind to certain things. Some things I find still a little bit,
Yeah, it goes with the territory, right? There's whenever you're talking about UFOs,
a little bit out there, and I think, well, okay, possibly. I don't sort of point the finger and say no. I don't know. People say they've experienced something. I wasn't there, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I suppose when you've witnessed something that defies the laws of physics and what is possible as we know it, that must affect the way you view reality, right? To some degree. It would for me.
Look, we are but one little dot in the universe.
Right. Right.
Honestly, the universe is infinite, isn't it? So, we cannot be the only possible. And in all honesty, my God, the way the Earth is, who would want to come here? All we want to do is blow each other up. Oh, for God's sake, I sometimes think they probably come around and have a look and say, oh, God, I'm not going there. Look at them, the idiots.
Now, this is of course, pure speculation, but what do you think it was? And
UFOs. I definitely think they were from whether it was another dimension, another universe, another whatever. I mean, you just look at technology, we've gone from, mobile phones that used to look like bricks to now mini computers to, and it could be could be part of us in dimension 6,725 or something. I think that it just changes all the time, and there definitely wasn't something of this era. I mean, of this world. They were, to me, different intelligence, just because of what they were. Yeah. Never seen anything like it since. Before, nothing compares in even today's aircraft or whatever compares to them, to what we saw in how they moved and just the whole thing.
Well, and in one sense, that being so long ago, it's difficult because there's so so much time has gone past and so much evidence might be more difficult to track down. But at the same time, being so long ago and being that advanced, I mean, there's a lot of people that say, given where our technology is at now, it could be more plausible that it could be a military experimental craft or Russia's or China's military craft. But given that it was in 1966, what we knew about technology back then, and we haven't actually seen any of the fingerprints
with
since.
Technology, especially with all this AI and stuff that's coming around now, it would be just amazing. I mean, look at techno. It's even like in science and all that sort of stuff. Things have changed so much. I mean, my son's 39. He's one of the first IVF babies born in Australia. So, without that technology, I wouldn't have had a family. And I mean, now it's just compared to what I went through way back then, and even now, that technology has changed so much. So that similar thing in the science field, and it's amazing. The incredible things they can do now just is amazing with robots and just technology. You can use your phone. It's like you can do your banking. You can speak to people around the other side of the world in an instant. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. There, David Grush has been the recent whistleblower that I think just spoke to Congress, and when he did his interview with Ross Coulthart, Ross was questioning him about, so these are potential beings or crafts coming from other planets, and I noticed that David Grush kind of corrected, saying or possibly other dimensions. It seems like there's been a bit of a shift in the narrative to suggest that these might not be interplanetary visitors, but these could be interdimensional visitors.
Look, maybe, but I really think that ours, whatever we saw, was definitely not of this world, and because the technology wasn't there then, right? It was nowhere near there.
Yeah,
no, definitely. Ours was definitely, whoever.
I mean, when there's suggestion of actual other intelligent creatures coming and visiting, I mean, my mind just goes to the weird details, like what do they eat? Do they have pets? Do they? What is their village like? What
are
they have
body?
politics?
Are they bodily like us, or are they? Maybe they're more like I don't know, 3-dimensional or something. Who knows?
Yeah. What is their society built on? Yeah, I really hope so.
How do they think?
Sure. One I spoke to UFO researcher George Simpson recently.
Oh, George, yep.
Yeah,
George very well.
Lovely bloke. He sent me through this photograph of some kind of UFO, and apparently it was taken in Balwyn, which is a nearby suburb, 2 days.
That's right.
2 days prior. I'm just holding it up to the screen.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I've seen that. Is that what you saw?
Similar, very similar.
A bit different?
Yeah, a little bit.
What were the differences?
Similar. Just with the bumpy thing on the top.
Yeah, this one's very bell-shaped. It looks like one of those silver dinner plate things when they reveal a fancy meal in the cartoons back in the day. Like, it's a very
yeah,
bell-shaped one. Was the
yeah.
one that you saw a bit more like the traditional one that is depicted throughout pop culture?
I yes, yeah. It's very, very similar. Very, very similar. It's not to say, maybe it was, but it was my perception. Don't forget, I was only a young, a young girl then. So, it's quite possible it was the similar one, but that's not my perception from back then.
Yep.
Perhaps if I saw it again today, I might think it, say, well, yeah, it really does look a lot more like that one.
Right. Yeah, fascinating. Well, I'm really, really hoping that there can be a resurgence of interest in this this particular incident. And I don't know how you can deny when hundreds of people have seen the exact same thing. I don't know
That's exactly right.
how any rational person can deny.
And it wasn't just kids either. I mean, it wasn't just kids. We had adults. There's probably even one of the kids, one of the witnesses' mothers, she's in her 90s now, but she recalls she was out she taking the washing out to hang on the line, and it flew over the top of her, or flew across. She saw it fly across the backyard, or in the sky over the yard. So I mean, it's not like we were all, no, we weren't drunk, and we weren't on drugs and whatever. So there is a huge, huge mixture of people, and there's people. We've had recently at one of our get-togethers, we had a guy came, Tom, really nice, younger than me. So, but he was at the primary school. Now he's only just come out and admitted, his fiance knew, she knew very well, but he's only just sort of come forward to talk because he feels confident now that he can, because he knows other people have seen what he saw. But he was a child. He was only about 7 or 8 or something, whereas we were, he was in the primary school and we were in the high school. So, there's a huge mixture of different people.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep looking wherever I can look about this case, because I'm absolutely enthralled by it.
Are you going to the thing Ross Coulthardt's doing in the State Library?
I'm actually going overseas on the 12th, so I think it's on the 12th, so I'm missing it, unfortunately. Which I'm pretty bummed about. So yeah. Damn.
Well, I'm actually in Ross's book.
Oh, great! Yeah, I've got it on Audible, so I'm yet to read it. But yeah,
it's good. It's good. He was a really lovely man. Very, very open, very good. And I did a thing with Ida Buttrose. And she was fabulous too. She was just amazing. She after the interview, she said to me, what did she say? She said, Joy, she said, I can tell by your body language and the way you talk. She said, I know what you're telling me is the absolute truth. And she said, I believe you.
I believe you too, Joy. I believe you too. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and another thing, if there are people listening that can point me in any direction, or if there's any more information, please hit me up on Instagram at intodeep.podcast, because I would love to try or anyone, doesn't have to be me, but I would love a bit more light to be shed on this.
I think incident. So. I think so too. Well, look, that's what I say. We just live in hope that one day, and the bottom line is, it did happen. We saw what we saw, and we weren't all hysterical, and we didn't make this story up. We've had all that said, that we all got together and, 200 and something of us, and we've all got similar. Yes, we have different perspectives. That is because we were in different spots when we saw what we saw. Some were on the field, some were over, some were coming out of the classrooms. We all have a different perspective on things, but we have a similar, or not similar, but that it binds us together because our stories are basically all the same. So. And you can't how could you manufacture that?
Yeah. Have to be a pretty sophisticated practical joke. But yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Joy, thank you so much for sharing your
thank you.
story. It's been
good. I hope it goes all right for you. I
Yeah,
hope you got what you wanted. So
absolutely. It's been a pleasure to talk and just hear about that firsthand experience. And yeah, we'll stay in touch. I'll let you know if there's anything else that I can find.
So if I get anybody else that's willing to talk to you, I'll talk to some of the girls. They might have a chat. There's because, like I say, you know, we've all got different story, but they're the same.
Right.
If you know what I mean. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've all got. Yeah. It's and it's really quite nice because there's still quite a few of us that we still get together and have lunch and all that every so often, so which is really nice. And it's funny, we don't talk about Westall. You'll talk about, you know, what have you been doing now, the grandkids, you know, blah, 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 you know. So it's really quite funny.
What a fascinating thing to bind you all, really.
Good on you. All right. Well, it's nice to meet you and thank you for your time.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Joy. And thanks everyone for listening. Take care.
Okay. Take care. Bye.